Warren Newport Public Library. Welcome to another episode of Kids in the Kitchen. Today we're going to make tomato soup. Before we get started, there's always a few things we need to do. Make sure your work surfaces are clean, your hands are washed, and if you have long hair, please pull it back. Today's recipe comes from America's Test Kitchen, and it's from the cookbook called The Complete Cookbook for Young Chefs. It's another cookbook that you can check out in the juvenile section at Warren Newport Public Library. Come and have a look. All right, some of the ingredients in today's recipe are diced tomatoes, chicken stock or vegetable stock, whichever you prefer, an onion, some olive oil, and a piece of bread. Oh, and a piece of garlic, 1 clove of garlic. We'll get everything ready. We're going to chop an onion, we're going to mince the garlic, and then we're going to go to the stove and pour it all in a pan and simmer it. So let's start with our onion. In the recipe it says a shallot, which is a small onion. So I have a little bigger onion, so I'm just going to use part of it. And today's recipe makes enough for 1 to 2 people. So you could always double this so that you'd have enough for, your family. So we'll peel our onion, get the skin off, put that on the side. So our olive oil we're going to put in the pan. And we're going to just saute that, which means we're just going to cook it in a little oil. So, now, since today's recipe is on the stove, you need to make sure you have an adult handy to help you. We're also going to blend this in the blender, so you're going to want an adult to help you with that too, because the soup will be warm. All right. So my onions cut up. And they make tools to mince your onion, but you could also just chop it up. That works fine too. In fact, I'm just going to mince mine like this. All right, so let's go to the stove. Okay, so our pan is on the stove. I've turned our heat on to about a medium. We're going to let some oil heat up. So we're going to use 2 tablespoons of oil. 1, 2. Then we're going to add our garlic. And then I'm going to put my onion in. So we're going to saute these up a little bit. Cook them up a little bit so they're nice and soft. Just a couple minutes. I like to use wooden spoons. It just works better. And the recipe says for about 3 minutes. So whenever they look soft and a little bit brown. Okay, I think this looks lightly brown, so I'm going to turn the heat down, and I'm going to slowly pour my tomatoes in. You might want an adult to help you. And these are just diced tomatoes. And then I'm going to add my 1/2 cup of chicken broth. Just like that. And I'm going to give it a little stir because I like to. Just want to stir things up. I like to stir. And I just realized I forgot to tell you, we're also going to add a teaspoon of brown sugar and my bread. So now I'm putting my bread in. So just a teaspoon of brown sugar, not much. Now I'm going to give it a good stir. And then I'm going to turn the heat up to like medium. And I'm going to bring it to a boil. So you want to push your bread down so that it gets nice and full of juice. It'll soften it up. So once I bring it to a boil, I'm going to turn it down a little bit, and I'm going to simmer it for 5 minutes. You could set a timer if you wanted to. Okay, I'm going to give it another stir. Not many ingredients in this soup. Probably many of the things you already have on hand at home. Starting to come to a boil. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it down a little bit. And I'm going to simmer it for the 5 minutes. So I'll see you back in 5 minutes. Okay, I have a nice boil, and I do tend to stir my soup a few times during the 5 minutes. Once your soup is simmered for 5 minutes, you're going to take it off the stove, either move it back on another burner or take it completely off the stove, and it needs to sit for another 5 minutes to cool, because we're going to put this in the blender, and we don't want it so hot that it pops the lid off the blender. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, welcome back. I think our soup is cool enough to put in the blender. So I'm going to take the cover off. And again, you might want to have an adult help you. And I'm just going to ladle it into the blender. It's rather thick. Smells good. Now this tomato soup isn't going to taste like canned soup. It's going to be fresh tasting, more tomatoey than a can of soup. So when you're using the blender and you're using anything that has a warm or hot liquid, you want to hold the cover on with a towel, just like that. And it doesn't take long. Okay, it's kind of steamy. I'm going to pour some in. Just like that. And I am going to add a few croutons to the top. Just like that. These happen to be plantain croutons. All right, and there's your soup. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.